If there's anybody there, not yet. Well, Kathy Southwestern and I are driving home from work. We went to work together today. And what do you label this?
Separateness.
Oh, good. Because separateness is what it said in the tape log for tape 163. Was one of the main subjects in it. And so we wanted to talk about it a little bit. What was in that tape log. Not the log, but in the tape itself. And I'll just start with, well, I want to wait and give some time for some folks to get here.
It's 2:30, babe.
Yeah. Yeah, but now there's 4 people. So that's good. The tape doesn't begin with separateness.
No, but that's what you wanted to discuss earlier. Talk about it, right?
Yeah. So Joe brought it up, and I'm going to try to give you some of his words, because I tried to take notes. Because he started to talk about it in terms of the BCs. Now, the BCs stood for bath chamber. Basically, what is a bathroom that they call a bath chamber. That was, both, it had everything in it. It wasn't just for bathing. A laboratory and a commode and a shower. And we didn't take baths, actually, like soap baths. A bath was considered to be a shower. And we had a bunch of procedures associated with it, as we did with everything, most everything. But there were times that were private. And at first, Joe said that was some kind of a emergency vehicle across the road here.
Well, it doesn't look like they're blocking the road off.
Turning around to go over to the side of the road. Oops. That was my phone, huh? How weird is that?
What do you mean?
The whole thing fell off.
Well, yeah. Stick it up here.
Oh, right. Okay, it was just on. You put it upside down.
Oh, I was like, what's going on?
So yeah, there seems to be some kind of accident here. Yeah, somebody outside the car who, I don't know if he's hurt or if he's drunk.
Probably drunk.
Yeah, it looks like he's drunk.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess
It
driving.
looks like he was taking a breathalyzer test. So he's lost his license. That's probably for the better.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be driving if you're that inebriated. And, laying on the ground.
Outside your car.
Outside your car, yeah. Anyway, so what he was saying was that sometimes for ideal growth of overcoming a vehicle, our bath chambers would be absolutely public, but we can't do that. And no, it's a place you will be tested, just like you're tested at your jobs in the world, which we call how to craft tasks. because you will be alone. And when you're alone, the next level is watching you to see if you will release the leash that you have on your own vehicle by your own free will to have that leash. In other words, one of the things that Tiendo said right from the beginning was the task that was being accomplished by the souls that were returning was to win a vehicle, take a vehicle over. Doe joked at one point and called us body snatchers, but he didn't really want to make fun of that. But that's what was happening, and it was interesting that just today I was reading some Facebook posts from an individual that makes a lot of posts about Jesus and the Bible and things, and he was talking about how the rapture didn't make sense to him, and so I left a comment for him saying that, well, actually the word rapture isn't in the Bible, and what the word that's used to interpret as rapture is catching away, being caught. And that Jesus, when he was recorded to have attracted his first disciples, or students is really the clinical term for individuals that wanted to look to him as their teacher, said that he was going to make them fishers of men. Fishers, like catching fish. And that can sound like a really negative thing, right? Are we just like fish that are going to be caught? To do what with? To eat us? Well, no, that's not at all what happens to the next level. But the analogy of capturing a vehicle was also brought up by Tiendo in terms of horses. And that the next level were like the ranchers, like the human ranchers, and they would go out into the wild country to get wild horses and capture them. The horses didn't want to go with them. They had to be captured and then taken into the corral of the rancher and then given training in order to tame them. And the ones that didn't accept the training, human ranchers would, if they were good ranchers, would release them back into the wild because they obviously weren't going to cooperate. But then there were some that would cooperate and even become servants of the human kingdom and even enjoy being servants of the human kingdom, even feel like they're one of the family. And I know that because I've had some exposure to horses that were, that my vehicle's daughter was being given horse lessons through the school with a local rancher that I knew. And I would go to lessons with her. And the horses were treated very well. They were combed, they were brushed, they were fed well, they were happy. And they enjoyed having the service. And of course, humans can abuse that, but the next level doesn't abuse it. There's no abuses in the next level. However, it doesn't mean that it's not easy for a horse to be trained. And in the circumstances that I'm talking about, that Doe is referring to, and T, the vehicle is like the horse, and even talks about that in other records in the book of Revelation and in Zechariah in the Old Testament. But So those are the human vehicles that a soul that has had some development in the past, like during the years that Jesus was incarnate, or Elijah, or Moses, or Enoch, or Adam, or even in between those, through other little teaching opportunities, even with other religions and in Buddhism, and in the Eastern India and China, who knows where. Because the next level are the creators of the entire human kingdom. And they're the creators of the human kingdom so that the vehicles can actually become instruments to learn lessons by overcoming their humanness. And replacing the programs associated with our genes with next level programs. And so anyway, but I got to get back to separateness. And my dad was talking about having a leash on your vehicle. And that Doe was saying in this tape 163, for anybody that just joined us, that we should all know how to appreciate the protection of living in this circumstance where all day and night you are reminded of the ways of the next level. And Doe said that separateness scares him because he says, I know what it can do. And then he gives an example. He says, take a classmate that is invited to go to a training camp for a week or two. Because we had out-of-craft tasks, and some of them were high-tech tasks like learning network programming, for I forgot the name of the different networks. Anyway, and so Doe said it would be absolute murder, use that word murder, because of the temptations. They would be extremely harmful to the growth of that student, to be so dedicated and focused on overcoming all their humanness and their desire to be selfish, like vehicles are, that it should be uncomfortable for a student to want to be in that separate kind of condition. And in the tape, Doe brought up, or T brought up the example of somebody going to their out-of-craft task and driving by themselves and being separate from a check partner and other members. Okay, Doe brought that up, and that they should be uncomfortable about that, and they should want to get back to the craft as soon as possible, so that they aren't in a separate place, even though the next level allowed that to take place, and knowing that it would be a testing ground. And there was two parts to that. When I heard that again on the tape, that I recognized how I had not grown to the place at that time in the class to where separateness was uncomfortable for me, because I was one of the individuals that was assigned the task of going to work by myself sometimes because of where it was located, my job, and where I could also be of service to pick up other class members or even deliver other class members before and after I had to get to my job or leave my job. so that we were doing some carpooling and consolidating. But that left me by myself. And I remember one time, which I only remember it happening one time, I was driving around in the white Cadillac, and I remember taking some pride in that, you know, like I looked like I was somebody special because I was in this white Cadillac, even though I wasn't facing with anybody. I just knew that was, you know, that made me look more important. That was kind of, that's a sideline to what I'm talking about. But I was not uncomfortable with being separate. And I remember having the thought at one point that I could just leave classroom right now and take this Cadillac with me. You know, and they probably wouldn't report it stolen, but they might have. You know, but I mean, I had that thought, and I didn't have any other thoughts about it. And when I told Kathy about that, she said, well, did you think about it? You know, where you would go or what you would do or something like that? And I said, no, I didn't go that far because I didn't have anything I wanted to do or places I wanted to go. I was happy in the classroom. I really was 100%. But that didn't stop influences from testing me. Or the next level from testing me. However, the next level wouldn't actually send me that thought, I don't believe, but they would allow a discarnate or a Luciferian space alien fallen angel soul to send me that thought. Because that's part of what the classroom was about, was allowing the lower forces to influence us at times, but that we shouldn't want those times. We don't want to have those tests. We try not to put ourselves in positions to where we have those tests. Now, I don't know how that exactly relates to now, because I know there were times where Doe did tasks separate from T. Not a whole lot. But sometimes he would bring a student, and one time he brought me with him to do a task of going to a store to buy something, and I don't even remember what it was that we bought, or he bought, but I just went with him in the car, and I drove, I think. Anyway, that's beside the point, but the reason why, well, I already talked about the reason why you don't want to be separate, is because that opens the door to what the influences want and what our vehicles want. So it opens the door to not being in control of our vehicle. And so a strong member of the next level, or a strong student member of the next level, would not want to put themselves in that circumstance. You know, there's a relative to it, nature to it. You know, I don't know that right now it's a wrong thing to do. Because I know sometimes, you know, Kathy and I aren't together. We don't like it. I don't like when I have to go to work, and for whatever reason, Kathy's not going to go with me. And I don't like when she goes to work when I don't go with her, which has happened a number of times as well. But sometimes it seems to make sense. And so we do it, and I don't feel like, knock on wood, that I've had any major tests in that department of, you know, wanting to do something that I wouldn't do when I was with Kathy. I haven't had that challenge, knock on wood. I don't want that challenge, you know. But, you know, maybe I'm strong enough to where I can handle it. But whatever, that's beside the point. The point is that both of us are uncomfortable with that. even though our vehicles might sometimes like a part of it. And it might be like subconscious. It's not like, because when you're not with somebody, then you don't have to, you're not challenged with anything that you want to do or say or think, or the way you're driving, or you're not faced with behaviors that you really don't want to have anymore, that you had in the past, that you were trying to outgrow and change. You still might be faced with those things when you know about them, and so you're choosing, well, you know what, I really don't like the way I drive right now because I don't have somebody else in the seat next to me that is going to, put the brakes on with their feet, because they're scared of the way someone's driving, or, and that might be uncomfortable or more comfortable, to not have that. But for a student that wants to grow, they should want that discomfort that comes by having a check partner. Like another part of it is what we listened to today in tape 164. I don't know if we should go into that a little bit. Where Tia and I were talking about the whole idea of I could be wrong, and how to work with one another as check partners, and how to use the terminology that is genuinely how members of the next level automatically relate with each other, which is what a student is trying to learn by being in the human kingdom, working in the human world, and having a partner or two or three or whatever, not even a partner necessarily, but just working with other people. Of course, it's a lot harder, I think, in the circumstance that we're in, because we're not in a dedicated classroom where all the students are trying to be of the same mind according to what T and O were giving us. That's got its tests as well, but right now, since the older members aren't here, and most of us probably aren't living with somebody else that wants to learn to abide by various behaviors and ways that are common to members of the next level, it just becomes a different testing criteria, and the next level knows how to judge and knows how to help us with the current circumstances. But our desire to still embrace their behaviors and ways is part of the lesson ground that we all have. And yeah, we're going to pick and choose probably what those are, but but it's not like all or nothing. It never is. Doe talked about that in a tape we recently listened to. So, you tackle what you can tackle, and but there's no limit to how much you can tackle. So anyway, so in other words, one student would say, I could be wrong, but I think the spaghetti is done. Okay, and how do you respond to that if you're the check partner in the spaghetti lab? Where you're making the equivalent of some important mixture of chemicals, like in the next level would be. Because the next level member doesn't want to say, no, the spaghetti's not done. Because they don't want to so depend on their own opinion that, because they know that when two people or more are seeking the answer to any circumstance, they stand a much better chance of up with the outcome that the older members would hope that they would be reaching for. And that outcome isn't spelled out. Like the doneness of spaghetti, it seems like a similar, a very trivial kind of thing. But if you were in a laboratory in the next level, and it was a very important thing, when to remove something from a circumstance that was changing its molecular structure, it could be a very important thing. And there has to be a bunch of judgment associated with that to determine it. So you want the experiment to come out right, the best way that it can come out. Otherwise, you might have a human vehicle that has eyes in its toes, and you don't need eyes in the toes because you didn't follow procedures. I'm just, bringing up a stupid example, but anyway, so what would be the right way to do it would be if you were cooking the spaghetti in the lab and your check partner was also responsible for that spaghetti, but you were the one that was actually checking it at the moment. You might say, what do you think about checking the spaghetti? And the check partner, then you'd be asking a question. So the check partner then doesn't have to say no to you. I mean, they could. They could say, well, it's only been in there for a minute, and it seems to always take, according to the recipe card, 2 or 3 minutes. So maybe it's too soon to check it. But then they might say, well, okay, let's check it, for the heck of it. I mean, because you had that thought about checking it, so maybe that would be the right thing to do. And so they go and check it, and they determine, so what do you think about it? And the person says, I could be wrong, but think it's done.
You wouldn't say I could be wrong, I think it's done. Right.
You wouldn't say that in that circumstance because, maybe you could express. Yeah, they did talk about that there were times when you wouldn't use I could be wrong. It doesn't mean that you couldn't use it, okay? But you can overuse things like that. There was a tool given to us so that we weren't trusting our own judgment about things, because members of the next level want to have the judgment of their check partners together with their judgment to arrive at a decision. And that's what the classroom was a big part of the classroom lessons. And but they did talk about how there were extremes to using I could be wrong, especially when it became rote, to where you were just saying it because it was instruction to say it, and you didn't feel it. And when you didn't feel it, it didn't matter if you used it or not. The other person could feel it and might not know how to respond to a question without, saying, telling you you're wrong. Because members of the next level don't like to do that. They don't get off on being right. They want to do right, but they don't care how that rightness comes about, whether it's from somebody else's instigation or, from wherever it comes from. That's what's important, that the experiment comes out right by the next level older members' judgment. So anyway, I don't know if I beat that to death or there's some clarity to that. But I'll just go back to, because though later on in that same tape said that, and I didn't record this properly in my notes. Maybe Kathy remembers it better. Because if you don't know it, Kathy's sitting right next to me right now in the car. And but he said that he was correcting himself from what he said earlier in the tape about that in an ideal circumstance, the ideal growth would be to where our use of the bath chambers was actually public. In other words, you could see the person in the bath chamber using the bath chamber in whatever way they were using it. And that would mean in a shower, so I guess technically you wouldn't be separate at that point. So you wouldn't have the opportunity to have your private moments with your vehicle, naked or whatever it is. The way that influences would like to have that sometimes. And so you were, so he was updating it and saying that he thought that wouldn't be a good thing to do because it would open other doors that I think would be more of a test, maybe. I'm not sure exactly, but...
Yeah, seeing each other.
Huh? Seeing
each other.
Yeah.
Circumstance,
Right. And so he updated that wasn't, because the procedure was that we had privacy in the bath chambers. And even if at times we were in the same bath chamber, we had a curtain in between us. So that nobody was seeing the other one naked, even though I remember a few times, I could have I had the thought of a temptation to, look when there was a female in the other side of the bath chamber. I could hear the thought, but just because we're not responsible for the thoughts we have. We're responsible for the thoughts we continue to have, choose to continue to have, and choose to act on. So that's what's important. It's not like I'm a terrible person because I had that thought.
All right, you gotta wrap it up.
All right, so I'll just see if there's any questions in the chat.
I think you have to hit, that's the only thing that I saw. I think you have to select all. If anybody even said anything, it's so late. Nobody's around.
Select all? I only see Old School Dave. So
I know,
that's
but
nice.
I'm saying with the chat filter, it might just be top comments.
Yeah, I don't know where that is on here.
Well, I don't think there's any. You only have one.
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
see any come across.
Okay. Well, there's 3 individuals now. All right, folks. I just wanted to talk about separateness and from the perspective of the tapes we just listened to. And I also went into a little bit about I could be wrong if somebody joined me late or whatever. But hope you all are doing well if you happen to listen to this later. And we'll be talking again, I hope. Good night.